Well, when it's getting close to 6, everybody gets quiet.
$40,000, I'll change mine.
I call the Maumelle City Council meeting to order. The first order of business is invocation and a pledge of allegiance, and I'm going to lead us in that tonight. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord, and we thank you for this beautiful weather that we experienced today, Lord. We'd ask that people that are suffering from the flooding, we'd ask that you be with them and protect them and watch over them as only you can. The rivers are still rising, Lord, in some areas, and so we know that these people will be impacted by that throughout our state and throughout our country, and so we ask you to be with them. We also know that there's been a massive storm on the East Coast and another snowstorm that's hitting the Midwest, Lord. We'd ask you to protect those people as they endure the hardships, Lord. We'd ask you to be with our military personnel that are serving our country, Lord. We'd ask you to protect them and keep them out of harm's way and bless their families that are here in the United States, Lord, and wondering about their loved ones, Lord. We ask you to comfort them as only you can. We'd ask you to be with our first responders in our city, Lord, as they serve our people and put themselves in harm's way on a regular basis, Lord. We'd ask you to protect them and watch over them. At this time, Lord, we'd ask you to help us to conduct our city's business in a manner that is pleasing in your sight, and we ask that you grant us wisdom in our decisions. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Our first order of business, or not our first order, but our next order of business is special guests and announcement. We have Mr. Tab Townsell with us tonight. Mr. Townsell is the executive director of MetroPlan, and he was the former mayor of the city of Conway for a really long time. So at this time, I'd ask Mr. Tab Townsell to come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to pass out some items for you, for you to have takeaways. I have been asked by the mayor to address you tonight on a number of things, a little bit of history about MetroPlan and what it is and what it does. Also to talk about impact fees, to kind of draw on Conway's experience with dealing with growth and how we implemented impact fees and what the impact of impact fees have been on our city, and to talk about some of the recent street development briefly that's occurred up there and explain to you how we went about funding some of those improvements to give you some idea. So I'm going to start these on this side, if you would, pass around and give you a quick read on what I'm going to talk about tonight. This is what I'm passing from this side around is the actual impact fee study conducted in Conway back in 2002, on which we based our impact fees. But to predate that, while you're passing all that out, let me explain to you what MetroPlan is. MetroPlan, at its core, is a regional council of governments. It also serves as the metropolitan planning organization for Central Arkansas, which is primarily, even though the region is technically 6 counties, the federal metropolitan statistical area is 4 counties, primarily 4 counties: Pulaski, Lone Oak, Saline, and Faulkner County. Okay, MetroPlan has its antecedents back as a regional planning commission centered in Pulaski County, and it was formed originally to help draw the Air Force Base to the Jacksonville area. That was what we were originally formed for. We were part private business. We were part public officials. We stayed that way and stayed in a planning environment with those, joint public and private till about 1970, and then we became a metropolitan planning organization, primarily with a regional council of governments flavor to it. We were designated as the official MPO for Central Arkansas in 1974 by Governor Dale Bumpers. Now, what that is, what MPOs come from, they were created by the federal government in the Transportation Law of 1962, and its cause came from the fact that when interstates were first being built in the United States, they were wonderful. Everybody wanted them. They wanted to get from point A to point B much quicker, and they were great until they started plowing through cities. See, the federal highway, the federal gas tax was given to state departments of transportation. And they had free reign to build the freeway system as long as it was approved by Federal Highway, and they had free reign within their states. And when they got to cities, they didn't have to answer to anybody. So they chose the center line, they chose the routes, and they chose whose houses were going to get torn down, whose businesses were going to get closed, and cities across the nation began to push back. So in response to that, the federal government created the Metropolitan Planning Organization, an opportunity for every metropolitan statistical area over 50,000 people in population. So to counterbalance the state departments of transportation with the money, they gave the approval authority, the sign-off authority really, to MPOs made up of local jurisdictions. So my board is made up of the mayors and county judges of that 4-county area. And technically, all federal funds spent on transportation projects inside that 4-county area have to be signed off on by my board of directors. MetroPlan is my board of directors, of which your mayor sits on as a board member. I sat on it for 16 years. 18 years. That's who has the authority. And it's not vested necessarily in any one city, it's vested in the region. For example, when the interstate between Little Rock, North Little Rock, and Conway was widened to 3 lanes each direction a few years back, the city of Mayflower couldn't decide it wanted to be Eureka Springs and tear the interstate out. They couldn't stop the project. It had to be signed off of. Now, the region could stop the project, but one jurisdiction couldn't. Okay? Likewise, when Interstate 30, the 30 crossing project in downtown Little Rock, we've signed off on it and said it's okay, you may proceed, and the highway department is still going through its traps to proceed with that project. It could still get caught up into a lawsuit, but if our board, and there was pretty much slim chance of that, but if our board wanted to shut that project down, by federal law, they have the authority to do that. That's our function in this. That's what we perform as an MPO. We are required to have a 20-year financially constrained plan on projects that we will be spending money on in our metro area. And then from that, we clip out a 4-year work program called the Transportation Improvement Program that once we pass it as a board, that's incorporated in the state Transportation Improvement Program and becomes part of the state improvement program for the next work program for the next 4 years. The state does not have to come up with a 20-year financially constrained plan like we do, so that's why some projects will appear out of the blue, because the State Highway Department has their motivations and the commissioners have their motivations, and those projects appear out of the blue seemingly, but that's just the way it's set up. Okay? That's what we're here to do. On the outside of the MPO, but inside regional governments, we also can encourage a lot of better planning. We can encourage we work with Ozone Action Days. We do a lot of things, but that's more of a bully pulpit. We do not have jurisdictional authority over any of those regional council of government things. We promote cooperation. In the MPO, we do have that little bit of authority, but as we say during the 30 Crossing Project, we can call balls and strikes. We can't throw the pitch. That's the Highway Department. Okay? That's what a MetroPlan does. That's what we do. We have 13 members of our staff. We just retired a 28-year executive director. Did a great job. I'm still in the learning curve. We have 13 great staff members that cover up for my mistakes. But they are planners. They are transportation engineers. They do a good job, and they are a resource that cities and counties around our region use. We're just double-checking, I think, truck routes for y'all right now at the request of the administration. So that's what we do. That's what we like to do. That's what we want to complement the work you do and help you do your job better if we can be a resource to you. But on impact fees, in the early 2000s, Conway was showing a need. We were showing a lot of growth. We were showing a need to deal with that growth. We weren't really set up to deal with that growth. And we had a conundrum. We were building a city strung out, cantilevered out on too small of a street system. We needed help. Through the 1990s, we had passed 2 bond issues, taking a half cent and doing a host of city projects. That allowed us to keep up. But what we were seeing was that we were building with the street component of those 2 bond issues, we were building new roads on the outside of town to new subdivisions. we were not dealing with the main roads and the congestion that growth was creating inside our city. We were beginning to get a lot of pushback from our public saying, why don't you make new growth pay for itself? And we don't want to pay for that. Okay? We were also asking them to pass sales taxes to give us the money to do other things, to build bigger roads. Deep into my 18 years as mayor, the city of Conway owned no four-lane roads. All the four-lane roads in the city were owned by the state highway department. At some point, that can't work anymore at some level of population. Well, we were quickly getting there, and we had failed 2 sales taxes by the time 2003 rolled around. So what we did, we had heard about this, we pursued a study on impact fees. We wanted to find a fair way to make new development pay for itself. A fair amount, not all the cost of new development, but a fair amount for them. The Boundary Street rule, we had actually gotten into this. We were remodeling our subdivision ordinance. We had gotten to this. We had determined that our Boundary Street rule that required a developer to build the boundary street on the outside of his tract of land that he was developing for homes, we required them to build that. The problem was when you dealt with the tract of land that was on 2 roads, then you created an automatic inequity in that subdivision's lots are going to be twice as much as the one who only had 1 road, same amount of land, same number of lots. You were creating an inequity there. Also, the developers quickly learned that it's really just that expensive frontage road that cost everything. If you could do a pipe stem off of that, on the idea is you would leave developable land for something else besides homes on the Boundary Street, then they only had to widen the pipe stem area. They could leave the open ditch everywhere else. Then they'd set their subdivision 1 lot back, and they would reduce the cost they would have to outlay to develop the subdivision. So there were workarounds. It was inequitable, it wasn't fair, and we weren't getting new roads built out to new homes and new subdivisions, and the population in Conway was sick and tired of it, and we couldn't pass a sales tax to get any more money. So what did we do? We did the impact fees. We hired Duncan and Associates. They presented an impact fee study in April of 2003. It was 34 pages long. I will get to why it has to be that long. It was adopted by the City Council on June 29th, 2003. After a brand new state law, we were beginning to wrestle with this as a state. They put a new state law in, and we came under the authority of that new state law. Our ordinance complied with that new state law that was passed in the legislative session of winter of 2003. And then we made the effective date. We passed it July 29th. We made the effective date September 1st. So we gave a grace period. So if y'all had a building permit, you had a month and a couple days to get that building permit issued. And if you had get it in the pipeline, and if it was applied for, that counted. The impact fees would not apply to those building permits. Okay? So you can imagine how busy we were in our permitting office that month of August 2003. What we did is we implemented 2 impact fees, a roads impact fee and a parks impact fee. You could have put in a fire station impact fee, you could have put in sewer impact fees, water impact fees, school impact fees. There's a host of different impact fees around the nation. We were primarily dealing with a problem with roads, and we simply had a rudimentary park system. We owned hardly any parks for kids in 2003 in the city of Conway. So we had to do something. We were looking for quick money. It seems like all the money available for parks was sucked up by something else before it ever got down to parks and the trickle-down theory. So we had to do something else. So we applied those fees on commercial property. Let me jump back up. It applies, now an impact fee applies to all new development. Okay? You can't say, well, we just want to apply to homes, or we just want to apply to offices or commerce. It has to apply to everything. But it is geographically based. In this area, you can apply an impact fee. If you want to set aside an area that you don't want to apply it in, that's fine too. But if you generate it in an area, it has to be spent in that area, whatever that area is defined as. But if none's applied, if there's an area that's exempt from impact fees, You can't spend impact fee money in that area. Okay, those are the rules. The impact fees, the commercial properties only are required to pay a street impact fee, a road impact fee. They don't generate the homes and the families that need the parks. Residences need both. So both applied to them. And the principle, the guiding principle is you can't ask for new development to pay for more than what the existing development has already paid for intrinsically. There has to be an equity there. It's called a rational nexus. That's why that impact fee study you have is as big as it is. If you look at it on page 9, they start the justification for street impact fees, on page 6, and they finish it on page 21. And between page 6 and page 21, it gets real dense in how they talk about building that proper fee based on Conway's history, what its road needs are, what its ratio of capacity to vehicle miles traveled, what the travel demand is, all those things. It requires looking at the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. It's obtuse. You're free to read it. I won't try to explain it, other than it's trying to equitably charge for a future fee for future residents, for future businesses, what you've already charged existing ones, through whatever fees, through whatever structures, through whatever tax structures you've got. So that's what's basic premise. You have to be able to defend your fees. And that's something they've learned because we're the middle part of the country. We're in flyover country. This has already been adjudicated time and time again on the West Coast and the East Coast. If you're going to do impact fees, you've got to mind your P's and Q's and do it the way that the law has been established. And that's where the rational nexus comes in, which means you have to establish a strong, clean line tie between historical cost and the fee you're about to charge. That's the rational nexus. Okay? The road study fee looked at vehicle mile capacity, vehicle miles traveled, based in Conway, trip length, trips per household, the service units, defining that, the cost per service unit, the net cost, because if you've got any debt outstanding for streets, you've got to back that out. If you've got, what else? If you've got a prediction of future state and federal road funding for the road system, and part of your roads are state highways, you've got to back that out. So it's a convoluted process to get to a fair number that you can defend. And then with parks, it's the same thing, although the methodology is a little bit different. So it's extensive. We set, because we were growing in all directions, we set our service area to where all the fees generated in this area had to be spent in this area. We set our fees citywide. So if a fee was generated on the west side of town, it can be accumulated until it had accumulated to enough numbers to do a project on the east side of town. So we didn't distinguish between east and west or north or south and wards because we were basically too small and it took too long to generate enough money to build a project like we needed with the cost of projects. We did. I can say that you can break it into smaller units if you want to. It becomes functionally less attractive because typically you're not going to accumulate monies that quickly in one area unless you've just got all your growth is going to be in one area. If you're building something like a fire station, applying a fire station impact fee, obviously one area, the service area, makes a lot of sense for establishing multiple areas. But other than that, we just did it, and with your size, you could probably do the same thing citywide. We did create 2 impact fee exempt areas, and if you flip over to the first page that came in on this way, you'll see we created an industrial area. And again, it's not an industry zoning. It's an area around that first interstate exit that we created for economic development. We called it industrial impact fee exemption area. It was an economic development impact fee exemption area. The very bottom part of that's where the Hewlett-Packard went with an office park. And the area that's just to the south and right of that first interchange on the interstate, that's that broader line with the bulb in it coming up the right-hand side, right center of the page. That's the new shopping center with Sam's. So it wasn't just industry. It ended up being commercial. But we did exempt that area. The new airport, Conway is currently redeveloping. That's going to be exempted, whether it's Dillard's goes in there or whether it's a a home that goes in there. All that area will be exempted. And then because we were trying to encourage downtown development, we exempted that too. So you can see those two areas of exemptions. By state law, that new state law that had just went into effect in 2003, you paid your impact fee, not when you got your permit, you issued your permit, you paid your fee with your certificate of occupancy, so that the builder didn't have to pay anything until he had the house sold and was going to get the utilities turned over to the new owner, and you got your certificate of occupancy, and that was what tripped the payment of the fee. Okay? We also had to establish when a remodeling would tack on a fee. If it was a minor remodeling, it wouldn't, but if it added house space, it would. Moving on down, that once you were established, once you started collecting fees, you had 7 years to spend any of those fees. It was a first in, first out situation. So you could still have a residual amount in your account at the end of 7 years as long as you spent the first monies that came in year one. So it was, you had to expend them all back in 7 years, or you had to pay it back. By state law, you had to have a list of projects, a list of street projects that you were going to add capacity to, and you couldn't resurface a road. You had to add capacity. They're not paying for maintenance. They're paying for developmental impact fee is a street impact for new capacity. So you're paying to widen a road, add a traffic light, to put in roundabouts, anything that will add capacity to your road system is what you're limited to. So you had to have a list of projects which you were going to add capacity to, and then a list of parks that you were going to address, park projects. That's what you were going to do. If you flip into the first page, you see the back of the first page, that smaller handout has the two exempted areas. If you flip over to the face of the second page, you see that was our actual impact fee numbers. There's a lot of different ways you can charge for single-family homes. Basically, they say the most logical is to do it by number of bedrooms. We didn't want to, council always has the authority, don't they, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Council didn't want to do that, so they wanted to do it by square footage and have a number of different steps rather than broad steps with one bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. They wanted much smaller steps. So they created a per square foot fee based on tiers on square footage of the house for single-family homes, a flat rate for all apartments regardless of bedrooms. You see the mobile homes, and then you get into the retail, office, and industrial. All of those were by 1,000 square feet. How many dollars per 1,000 square feet? That became a multiple. And we had to amend it a few times. Not all convenience stores, for example, the square footage of the store itself doesn't dictate how much of an impact you have. The number of fueling islands dictates that. So we amended that to make that more because people were building C-stores that were small square footages but a large number of gas stations. So we fixed that. If you'll notice, though, in terms of single-family homes, the largest single-family home, more than 5,000 square feet, the total impact fee that we put into place, the total impact fee that we could possibly charge based on our historical numbers was $2,295. Now, we could set that. We were given the option as a city council to set that at any percentage of that we wanted to. Our city council chose to set it at 100%. Okay? But it could have been set at half of that, as long as it was consistently set up and down this whole page at half of that. But even then, at $2,295, you'll see for a dwelling unit over 5,000 square feet, that was less than $1 a square foot. And if you go up to the standard single-family home of, say, 2,000 square feet, it was $1,698. That was less than $1 a square foot still. And in the meantime, from when the time we passed this ordinance to when I got out of office, our single-family home prices went from $75 and $80 a square foot to $110 a square foot. So we didn't impact the price of the house much at all by doing this. Another complaint we always got, if you flip to the back page of that smaller handout, you'll see the actual building permits issued in Conway before and after the impact fee was put in place. We really started blowing up in growth in the late 80s. You can see from going from 41 in 1987 to 168 permits in 1988. It was about right then that Conway really started growing. It was 20,000 people in 1980, 26,000 people in 1990, but it was beginning to really accumulate some steam. If you look in the 10 years prior to 2003, when we put in the impact fee, the average number of permits issued a year was 425. That's the trailing average from 2002. The biggest year was 1994. We issued 513 permits that year. But if you also remember, that was the year that you had the Pulaski County desegregation lawsuit that was threatening to bring in everything inside Pulaski County into a unified district. That was the threat that people were worried about. And also, I think the video, the show Gangbanging in Little Rock came out. There was a lot of uptick in a murder rate in the city of Little Rock. I think you had 74 murders in 1994. So there was a huge demand for outflying. If you go look at the numbers across the region, that's when the outlying counties really started growing in population. But that was the Conway's biggest impact building permit year until 2003. That month grace period from when we passed the ordinance to when it went into effect, we jumped up dramatically. Everybody who had a building permit project came forward and issued a building permit, which was good for 6 months. And we issued 645 building permits. That's still our record in Conway. The previous year, in 2002, prior to impact fees, that was the 6th highest, tied with 1993. That was the 6th highest ever. So we had over 1,000 building permits those 2 years in our system being sucked up by demand. What we have been told time and again, we have heard it quoted at Little Rock City Council meetings, that impact fees destroyed the building market in Conway. With 1,000 permits in the system in 2002 and 2003, the next year was the 3rd highest building permit issued year in the city of Conway's history. And the next year, 2005, was the 5th highest. And then the next year finally dipped under the old 10-year average. So if there was an impact, it might have been down in 2007 where our impact fees in Conway began to impact the entire building market in the United States of America, because that's when the national mortgage crisis started, was in 2007. So I think if there's anything shown by this evidence, impact fees increased the building permit numbers in Conway, looking at this chart, versus decreased them. So I don't think impact fees hurt the city of Conway by itself. What the city of Conway did with these fees, and they raised combined streets and parks, commercial and residential, about $10 million through 2010. The street impact fees allowed the city of Conway to go out and build new roads, build county lanes into city streets on the outside of the city of Conway, because we were still boxed out from rededicating our sales tax. Allowed us to build city streets out of county lanes on the outskirts of the city of Conway, primarily to build to new schools that, because of state law, that's where they found the cheap land of enough size to buy that land and build their schools. Had that impact fee not been there, we would not have been able to build about 5 roads to new schools, because they had to respond to this growth too. That allowed us to build those roads. We had no other source of money to do it until we could get a chance to rededicate our sales tax. That was going to happen in 2006. So that allowed us to build those roads. And then when we could rededicate our sales tax in 2006, we were able to dedicate that money towards widening our existing roads that now, instead of serving a city of 20,000 or 26,000, was serving a city of 48, 50, 55, 60,000. And the old question of whether development was paying for itself was eliminated by impact fees. That was no longer part of the discussion. So it cleared that deck of that issue. New development was paying for itself. And now we got to decide whether we want to go on and go forward with doing what we need to do, passing sales taxes, rededicating sales taxes to build the road system we need to serve not a city of 20,000 or 25,000, but a city of 60,000 to 75,000. So that cleared the political discussion for us, and everybody could say that everybody's paying their fair share. Okay? That's what impact fees did to us. I will say that they provided a source for money out there. We still had a quarter-cent sales tax, which we rededicated. We rededicated in 2006. It was a full bond issue based on a half cent. We cut it into two and issued bonds on half of that, set another half aside as pay-as-you-go. We split that in 2012 again, put a quarter cent towards a bond issue, and then a quarter cent, an eighth of a cent of a bond issue, an eighth of a cent towards increasing employee salaries, and the other quarter cent stayed as pay-as-you-go. That was primarily being used for street projects, because you never know if you're growing fast where you'll need money next. And then in 2014, we rededicated that eighth of a cent again, and that allowed us to go into the major street improvement program that allowed us to build that new overpass of the interstate by Target totally ourselves. That was a $14 million overpass and roundabout and reconfiguration of the road system. Along with the road system, that was another $10 million back on the old airport property, tying into projects with Highway 25 in the north side of town, activating a new road overpass, interstate overpass at the interstate that the Highway Department had built for us previously, tying in the new interchange between Conway and Mayflower to the street system. After that, the grand total package was $33 million that we paid for. The projects around the airport and Conway Commons with the new overpass was a grand total of about $24 to $25 million. The State Highway Department didn't put anything into that. We simply got tired of waiting for them to do our work. We're not the only ones that have built whole new overpasses of the interstate. Bentonville has built one by themselves. I think Rogers has built one by themselves, and Springdale has built one by themselves. In essence, you've always heard the old saw that's attributed to Ben Franklin, that God helps those that help themselves. I was Baptist. I never quite heard that in my Baptist upbringing. But I will say this much. The Highway Department does help those who help themselves. The $14 million for a project for the overpass, we did on our own. Everything else was used as match monies for one of their projects. The Highway Department will respond more quickly if you kick in more money than their expected normal 20% match. So this is what they've been doing in Northwest Arkansas. We borrowed a page from Northwest Arkansas and started doing our own. The Highway Department famously doesn't have the money to do everything for everybody. If you have money you come in hand with money, they're much more likely to come and meet you halfway. And so that's what we tried to do. Although that one project, the $14 million overpass, we had to do totally ourselves. They were never going to do that for us. So help yourself first, and then hopefully the Highway Department can come along. All that said, did I answer all your questions, Mayor?
Well, we'll find out.
Okay, I'm free.
You answered mine, but there's some lights on. So, Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, and that was for another thing, but that's fine.
sorry.
I had some questions, or a question or so, but thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
You dished out a lot of information, very concise there. I think we all managed to cabbage on, so.
Well, there's always follow-up questions, so I've got an easy email, ttownsend@metroplan.org.
Okay.
So.
Does MetroPlan, would they get involved in any way in guiding us through, say, if we decided to do a impact fee study, maybe help guide us toward a consultant, or can you consult independently?
I would not consult independently in the umbrella of MetroPlan. Now, if they call me in from out of state, I'll bring my briefcase and I'll be the outside expert. But in my jurisdiction, you get my services for what the dues you pay as a MetroPlan member. So I'd be happy to visit with you, and any of my staff would be happy to visit with you like we are on call with the mayor's office. So yes, we could be able to help you with that. I would strongly recommend, if you are interested in impact fees, to get an impact fee consultant, because they're the ones that know the law, that know the court cases, and know what you should be wary of. And everybody should ask why, and they'll know why not, or the answers to the question why. So I would strongly recommend we could do that, and we could help you in the process of selecting it. In our day, none of the local engineering firms that do consulting work felt comfortable with that. That might be different today. So you could check with the Garvers or the Crafton Tolls or the McClellans, or if they're comfortable doing this work. You just need someone that's good enough for you to go to bat in case someone sues over the validity of your fees. So I would recommend that you go with somebody that knows what they're talking about.
And is Conway the only one here in central Arkansas that has used impact fees?
Cabot used them and then took them out during the national housing crisis. They put them in, then took them out. I do not know if they went through a full study. Okay, and maybe they did. I'm not aware of that.
Which city was that? I'm sorry.
Cabot.
Cabot.
Cabot, okay.
City of Sherwood did go through a study, then decided not to apply the fees.
Okay.
Okay, now they're talking about passing a sales tax to do some street work. But we hope it's successful. So,
My questions are done. Whoever gets them.
Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for bringing this information to the council. It's wonderful. I have just one question. You know, you said that that the impact fees didn't seem to affect your new growth in building, but you touched on a little bit about the impact fee exemption areas. Did you get the outcome that you guys were looking for by exempting those areas? And what I mean by that is, did you get more economic development in those areas that you did not apply the fee?
downtown did redevelop dramatically. I mean, in 2003, it had not, taken off like it has now. We didn't get that much new development, new building downtown. We got a refurbishing of the old building, and the city took pains to redevelop the streetscape, which was always ours to start with. So we put money in. So while we did see a huge increase in development, and it ended up being a great destination place for us, I can't attribute it all to the impact-free zone. However, I am seeing a lot of interest in that industrial area. A lot of it's commercializing. That whole first Dave Ward interchange area is commercializing to a large degree, and that's.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean. What about the hospital, the new hospital area? Is
that was in the exempt area. So.
And how much do you know that you're bringing in, that Conway is bringing in from these impact fees? Do you know?
It's bringing in quite a bit less now. I haven't seen the new numbers recently. At its peak, the study says we were going to bring in 2.2 million in streets and another, so many hundreds of thousands for parks. We never achieved those numbers, but because you have to give credits and you have to do a variety of things to keep it fair. Sometimes we got into some trade-off situations that if we got a developer to build a street for us, then we would trade them off the impact fees. Or if they would add to the park or donate parkland, we would trade those off. So we never quite hit, and that's allowed. It's all in that language. So we never quite hit our numbers. Most we ever picked up in street impact fees any given year. In a number of years we did this. It was about 1.5 million, and then around 700,000 to 800,000 in park fees a year.
And was that hard to allocate whenever you're coming to your budget meetings? And let's say you had a project you want to do for a park, and you had enough impact fees to start the park, but you didn't have enough to do the whole thing. Can you mix impact fee money with general fund money?
You can.
Okay.
And we later, we didn't have any room in the general fund to do that. But we, in a perfect world, it would be great. But we did create A&P tax and dedicated a large portion of that later towards parks, which has primarily it's carried most of the load in terms of developing our park system. And we do commingle those monies for our projects sometimes.
Okay.
But the key is you have to keep a list for the impact fee monies and keep those housed physically separate. But yes, you can commingle. And the 7-year period allows you to accumulate if you need to. If you don't have any other source of money, it allows you to accumulate enough to get it built. But if you had to, push came to shove, you can commingle.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Vapurzian?
Thank you very much. The impact fees, did you ever raise them? Because it said 2003 to present, or did you just keep them where they were? How did you visit those numbers?
We've asked the council. They had no stomach to raise them after that. And once they were in, and once they were in at 100%, they were comfortable with it. Based on the work that we have done since 2003 in widening streets and making 5 lanes, actually very few 5 lanes, but median divided roads, we could charge a much higher fee now based on the historical cost of building. We have now had to buy right-of-way. Back in 2003, we had never had to buy right-of-way. It was always granted to us. Those days are long gone, so we're buying most of everything now. So yeah, the fees could be much bigger, but the council's not had the stomach to do it yet.
So you had 147 single-family building permits last year. We had a high year of 60, which would, if at $1,500 per permit impact fee, average give you 90,000. My thought is this to my fellow council members: we've got 500 new residences fixing to go in our Council Massey area. We are going to have to build a new fire station and a new police station and fund those. And this would be a premier way, a service, community service impact fee. Just a thought. It just came to my mind because how much was our new fire station, Mayor?
Right at $2 million.
Yeah.
So if we did 500 times 1,500, that's still only 750,000, but it's a good start for a couple of buildings that are going to have to be built in that area. We just know that because of the growth. So it's just a thought, but I appreciate it very, very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I don't know if there's some impact fees. And Marion had the very first one in Arkansas. It was a sewer hookup fee, but it was really dressed as a impact fee. There's some in Northwest Arkansas, I think Conway has the only one left on streets. But I don't think anybody's doing a fire station, but they're common in Dallas and Florida and up the East Coast and West Coast. So, yes.
It's hard to argue with that.
It's very finite, too. So you could establish a very distinct area for that.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
you bet. Thank you.
Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Was there a significant pushback from the citizens of Conway because of their perception that the city council had imposed a tax on them without allowing it to go to the citizens for a vote?
No.
There wasn't.
Now the home builders did. Don't and the developers in league with the home builders. Yes, they pushed back dramatically.
But that was passed on to the consumers, the buyers of.
But the new people coming in,
Right.
theoretically.
Okay.
So no, they didn't. But in all honesty, though, in all fairness, this was a number of years before the Tea Party movement. Okay, but it is something within the jurisdiction of the city council to impose.
Okay. Well, I was more concerned about public perception.
Now, the existing citizens fully backed the idea of impact fees because they didn't want to pay for the new people coming in, and there was a whole bunch of new people coming in. They didn't want to pay for the new people, so they were fully supportive of it.
And did you?
I got reelected a couple times after this.
I'm not worried about being reelected. That's not what it's about.
I had a passing thought or two about being reelected, so yeah.
Well, that's not why I. Did you do a lot of promotion and publicity on this to the general public prior to doing it?
We had a newspaper that covered it very well. We didn't really go out beyond that. Just the natural coverage of it took place. Certainly, those people who were interested in the building process, they certainly knew about it. That 625 number was evidence of that. But we did all the normal things. But our newspaper used to cover things pretty thoroughly.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Councilmember Holt?
Thanks again from this side of the aisle for coming over. Just wonder, now, this is being passed on to the builders, is that right, and developers rather than the individual household that buys the house? You said something about that they don't pay it until after the house is sold?
It's after the house is when they get a certificate of occupancy with the house, that's when it's paid. And it's listed on the building permit what the fee will be. So they'll get the building permit on the very front end, and the future impact fee is listed there. Right. And then when it comes in, so the builder could pay it. Actually, some builders made the home buyer pay it. It didn't matter to us. We were agnostic to that. But sometimes it was passed on directly.
So at some point in time, you arbitrarily started a date that this is going to go into effect as of anything built from this day forward? Is that what you're saying?
They arbitrarily picked September 1st, and any new building permits issued from that day on, it applied to them. Okay. The homes that were being finished up, that were in the pipeline, so to speak, permits that had already been taken out, that was already, they were waived. They weren't required to pay an impact fee.
Okay, I'll ask a sort of a side question to the mayor that we passed a fee some weeks ago about what people will pay a fee for per square foot, like the school, or if it's for a home. How does this relate to that?
It does not relate. Those were building permit fees for remodelings.
Okay.
So this does not relate at all to that.
All right. Okay. I appreciate it, sir. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I will point out that one sheet with all the different fees. There's some real head scratchers on that. But I wasn't going to argue with the people that could stand up in court and testify for me. I will say that we had a long knockdown drag out with the UCA, and they finally agreed without taking us to court to a lower fee, but it was more like the elementary school fee, so we think they got away with a very good deal. Same way with schools. If you've been anywhere around when a school lets out, you'll realize the impact they have on it. And they got a good deal in this too. But that all was generated by the consultants.
Councilmember Mosley, do you have another comment?
I have one personal question, if you don't mind. I was curious. You became mayor of Conway, and I was curious about what your background and maybe education were before. Had you always wanted to get into this type of public service?
Elected office, yes. I thought I wanted to be in Congress, and then I realized that would be too frustrating, and that was 20 years ago. So it'd be worse today. I was a political science major. Have you ever met a political scientist?
Exactly.
So I went and got an MBA after that, to find something honest to do. Then went to work for my father in construction. We were in the building construction industry, not home building, but commercial building. And so I did have a good, honest job before I got into this line of work. But
All right.
But that did give me a lot of practical experience in building and development and project management and personnel management. So it was a really good background for this job, although I didn't know anything about police and fire. That was on-the-job training.
Thank you so much.
And Mr. Townsell, the Conway did just pass another sales tax to do something with their streets, didn't they?
Yes, they passed a 3/8 of a cent. They would have passed a 1/4 cent, but that particular denomination, according to the bond attorneys, the legal folks, was already taken by a previous tax in Conway, so they had to go down or up. So they brought it in at 3/8 of a cent, and it was for street maintenance. That's the other component of this. Through all that growth in the late 80s and early 90s, the pigeon has come home to roost, so to speak, and so all those roads that were built, not just the main roads, and we limited our impact fees to the collector roads and the arterial roads, not the local streets. But all those collector and arterial roads that were first built in the late 80s and early 90s, and all those local subdivision roads were beginning to break down. And between still trying to build to new development, to build new overpasses, to deal with our growth, they didn't have the extra money. The general fund never had the extra money. So they went out and passed a maintenance fund that's only set at 5 years. This was the mayor after me.
Right, I understand it.
I was five out of 9, so 5 and 4 was my record on passing sales tax initiatives. So almost a failure. Almost. Only 5 years, but in reality, they're going to have a continual, degradation of their streets at the local areas in the subdivisions, and they're going to need continued maintenance money into the future just dealing with their growth. And they grew 63% in the 1990s, 42% I think in the 2000s. They have slowed down. You can see pretty dramatically, but they're going to have to pay for that growth, the second run on that growth, and that's what they passed.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Mosley, do you have?
Yeah, one more question. Any rough range that it might take to get a impact fee consultant to do what they did for you all?
That I should have checked that. I think it was in the range of $15,000 to $20,000, maybe less.
Okay.
But they will come always for an hourly fee. They will come and defend it in court, and that's the key. They know the methodology. It is obtuse, but if you're interested in that, I'd strongly recommend. That's money well spent.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right.
Mayor?
Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Townsend. We
My
appreciate
pleasure.
Your time.
You bet.
So,
And
you're free to leave if you wish to.
I'll do it. Metroplan's email address, my email address is ttownsell@metroplan.org. My cell phone number is 501-472-8600. Don't think you're special. I did it from when I was mayor. Told everybody. So call me if you need me. Email me if you need me. Very good?
Thank you.
Thank you
Mayor,
very much.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Next item is the approval of the minutes from the February 20th regular meeting. All the council members have a copy of that. All right, I'm sorry. Councilmember Mosley, your light's on again.
I'm sorry. I meant to wait, but I'm going to make a motion here later on that we go ahead and maybe postpone the department reports tonight since we have such a big agenda. I can either make that motion now or wait until we get there.
They're here.
They're here, yeah.
Pardon? Do
They're
it right
already
now.
here.
Okay, I'll make that motion. I make a motion that we go ahead and just kind of, we put those department reports off till the next meeting where we have a less of an agenda. That's my motion.
We have a motion to put the departmental reports off till the next meeting. Is there a second on that motion? Motion fails for lack of a second.
That's great. I just thought I'd offer that up. Thank you.
Okay. All right. You have the February 20th meeting minutes in your packet. Is there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the February 20th regular meeting minutes. Is there a discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is public comment. I have two public comment cards here tonight. The first one is on an item that is not on the agenda tonight. The second one is on an item that is on the agenda. So at this time, we'll hear from Mr. Jim Moreno. Please state your name and address for the record, please, Mr. Moreno.
Excuse me. Jim Moreno, number 8, Christie Lane. Anything more? Okay. On the last agenda, the handout sheet, I think it says that public comments concerning items on the agenda will be allowed when the item is discussed by the council. I think this is a change from what it used to be. Now, does that mean that if someone's talking or giving information, that someone here in the audience can raise their hand after the person has spoken, of course, and say, I have a question? Is that what that means?
I don't think there's been any change made, and I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. I'm sorry, you lost
Okay,
me.
on the regular meeting, on the
Okay.
agenda.
You're talking about under public comments.
Under public comment, it says,
Which
during
line?
public comment, issues not on the agenda may be addressed. Correct. It's always
At this
yeah,
time,
yeah.
during public comments only, though.
Yeah.
I mean, because if something came up during an agenda item, it would be during the agenda item, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there's something not on the agenda It's discussed at this time.
At this time, yeah.
Correct.
Now, the next sentence says, public comments concerning items on the agenda will be allowed when the item is discussed by the council. Does that mean that I can raise my hand when it's being discussed and say, I'd like to make a statement?
No, we would prefer you fill out a public comment card, and you can do that during the meeting while the discussion is going on and just pass it to the front. Now, we do sometimes allow people to make comments, but it's typically done formally with a written request.
Okay, so it's my understanding then, if someone's talking about the streets and I'm back here listening, then I can fill out a piece of paper and then request to come up and ask a question.
If it's an agenda item.
If it's an agenda item, if it's
Yes.
on the agenda, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's the way I understand it.
Okay, I appreciate that clarity, and you may see me ask a question or two. Thank you. That's all I had.
All right, that's not what you wrote down on your meeting minutes, though.
How did I write it down there?
Change in council meeting venue?
I thought it was a change. I thought it said that we
Well,
couldn't.
venue would be the location where we meet at.
Oh, not venue. No.
Okay,
No.
that's, okay.
I'm sorry. I
Okay,
apologize.
all right, okay, all right, okay.
So the next question is, will you be taking questions from the people here during the council meeting?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question, Mr.
Okay.
Moreno.
Okay. And it says public comments concerning items on
At
the
this
agenda.
time, we're going to take comments from you. We're taking comments from you.
Right. But not during the meeting. Is that correct?
Well, if you fill out a card, we will, yes, if you have something you need to say, but we're not necessarily going to answer every question that you ask.
Right. Right.
We take your comments, not necessarily questions.
Comment. Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Here's a situation. The third sentence goes on to say, anyone wishing to make a comment must fill out a provided form and present it to the city clerk.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, we would prefer that you do that before the meeting starts, instead of interrupting the meeting, going back and forth, filling out forms during the meeting,
Okay. Yeah.
I think.
But there's
I'll
no-
admit I was a little confused between all three sentences.
If I can, Mr. Moreno, so I believe we have two comment cards for today. One of them was yours and not on an agenda item, so it's addressed during the public comment time.
Right.
If your comments were on something that was on the agenda, we would just wait so that the comments you gave were more timely to the discussion that was going on at that time.
But not during the meeting. You would have to fill out a form for the next meeting.
Well, no, we have allowed people to fill out comment cards because something may be said that they want to make a comment on, or other people may have said something during the public comment portion of that item. And so we allow those cards to come forward.
Okay.
But as Councilmember Saunders, it's easier so that you're not passing it down in front of them
Okay,
that,
yeah.
that it be done. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And this isn't
Okay.
a change, I guess, just to also clarify, this is the way it's been at least for the last 5 years. I don't know beyond
Okay.
that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Mosley?
So basically, if somebody thought they might have some questions tonight, fill out a form, give it to us now, and then when that item comes along, you would have your card in. And if you decide you don't have any comments, you can just say, I'd like to pass. You understand what I'm saying?
But it would
have to
be the next meeting.
No.
No, if you want to do it right now, if you want to fill out a card, you think you might have questions, give us the card.
Is that correct, Mayor? Is that
Yes.
okay? So it has to be done by writing.
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
prefer a formal card be filled out,
Okay.
but you can do it tonight. Yes, sir.
Right now. Right now.
So okay, yeah, that clears it. That was my question, really. It sounds odd. Sounds odd, but thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Financial statement review is the next item. It will be done at the next meeting. At this time, we'll have the department reports. First up is our Planning and Zoning Department, Mr. Jim Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members. Ladies and gentlemen, you pretty much know everything I do because you see it all the time in many different forms. You get the agenda for all the Planning Commission meetings. You see me and get to talk to me at meetings like this. And sometimes some of the applicants out of the Planning Commission meeting follow me here, as they are tonight, with the people from Stericycle and Interstate Development for their third and final reading for the proposed amendment to the zoning map. Most of the things we do, as I said, you're aware of. Coming in March, we have 3 warehouse buildings, 1,200 square feet, 1,200 square feet, 7,500 square feet, that will be located on some property proposed between Victory Lane and Lewis Nelson Drive. Depending upon how your vote goes this evening for the proposed rezoning for the gentleman behind me, we will also then see their site plan and landscape plan for their development at 1201 Murphy. Councilmember Mosley, I see that you have the liaison in March. You'll be arriving at one of our largest agendas we've had in quite some time.
Wonderful.
Many of you attend a planning commission meeting and they're over in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. A long meeting for us is 30 or 40 minutes. But what you don't see is the weeks and sometimes even months of work that goes on behind the scenes before they ever come to the planning commission. The subcommittee meeting where we hash everything out. Councilmember Mosley attends quite a few of those, and they're informal, but if you've never been to one, it might behoove you to come by and see what those guys do. And when you hear me say staff recommends X, staff is a whole lot more than me. Staff is me, the mayor's office, the city attorney, Madam City Clerk, economic development, public works, zoning, permitting, code enforcement, the fire department, sometimes even Chief Williams in the police department. That's all of staff. That's not just me. And there's some things that you don't see. This is the time of year when I have to do multiple reports. Somebody's always trying to semi-audit me for something, whether it be FEMA or the EPA. But out of my department, we also do the year-end report to keep the city stormwater permit going for ADEQ, and that takes quite a bit of time as well. Coming later will be an update to probably the most important document, in my opinion, that we have, which is the master street plan. It's a good idea to update your master street plan at least every 5 years. This will be updated in about 3.5 years. Later this evening on your agenda, you're going to vote on a resolution that's going to have far-reaching effects on the master street plan. Not only that, but every other important document that comes out of my office. The master zoning map, the master land use map, even the extraterritorial jurisdiction map. And listening to Tab while he was here, that reminds me, Metroplan does a lot for us. Hans Hallstein, their GIS technician. Every map I have is made by Hans, every one of them, with the exception of our extraterritorial jurisdiction map. We got an assist from Pages on that. Hans will probably do that the next time. Invaluable resource. And I also want to say I've been a Conway resident for the last 23 years. Tab Townsell is widely regarded as the man who saved Conway. When I got there in '95, Conway was in bad shape. He pretty much propped that city up and made it what it is today. So voted for him a few times myself. That's all I have for you all this evening. Do you have any questions?
Doesn't look like. Oh. Councilmember Mosley.
Almost got out of here without you hitting that light.
If this interchange thing passes and things kind of get kick-started around here, is that going to mean an expansion in your department, do you think?
Well, I don't know, because I think it's a rule of thumb that if you can make things work with very little, that's probably how it's going to be. So I would welcome some help, like a GIS technician, but we've been able to get by for the last 15 years with very little. So as long as that's working, I'm okay.
I like that. Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank you very much, Mr. Neri.
sir.
Thanks, sir.
This time we'll hear from the Fire Department Chief Gerald Ezel.
Smile. I'm going to try to make this short. Just some of the things we've got going on with the fire department right now. We've got fit testing equipment coming in. What fit testing equipment is it's a way to make sure that the seals on our masks that we wear whenever we wear our breathing apparatus in hazardous atmospheres, make sure that the seal is correct and we've got the correct size mask on everybody. That's normally something that OSHA requires you to do in your physicals. We're going to be able to do that here in-house now for our people. We got that money from the federal government through an AFG grant. So I got it ordered about 3 weeks ago. We were checking on it today, and I still haven't heard whether or not it's in yet or not. So it should be here shortly. Secondly, paramedic students, we're hoping to get 3 of them started this year. So if we get those 3 in, that will give us 8 paramedics total, which should allow us to go ahead and certify one of our engine companies here in town as ALS. But when we get them into class, it's 13 months before they actually get a license to perform as a paramedic. So we're looking at late 2019 before we can get that taken care of. But that's something we're working towards right now, trying to get that started. So. We have 1 new employee that replaced a person that left us in December that is down in Camden right now, going through he should be finishing up ENT right now, and then he'll start his standards for the next 7 weeks. And then he'll turn around and do 2 more weeks for driver operator. So he's getting to spend a little bit of time in sunny Camden, Arkansas right now. So, what else? We have an energy program that we're actually taking part in. We did our bay last year, about September, where we changed all the lighting out in the bay to LED lighting. It was something that Energy came in. They gave us advice on what lights to put out there, the fixtures and everything, and it will be a money savings thing. They said we would see the savings within 17 months of what we spent on it just in the energy savings alone. With that in mind, we turn around and now we're getting ready to do the inside, the interior of Station 1. We're going to switch everything out to LEDs, same kind of deal where Energy pays, they pick up about 60 to 65% of the bill. We pay it all up front, then we get it back. So it's one of those kind of deals, but I mean, when you've got that opportunity and it actually saves us money, I kind of figure you got to go for that. So, our new engine is here in Maumelle. It's actually being outfitted right now, and we're looking at March 13th, 14th, and 15th. All 3 shifts will go through the training on that apparatus because it's a little different than any apparatus we've ever owned before. It's actually got a puck pump in it, which makes it very simple. The puck pump was actually developed from concrete pumping trucks. This is actually what that came from. So they figured if they could move concrete with this pump, surely we could move water in a fire apparatus. So it's a very simple pump style, and it's very easily accessed. If we have a problem, we lift the cab and there it is. I mean, it's not like I can remember being a young firefighter and having to crawl in a square hole about 1.5 foot by 1.5 foot and actually lay in on top of things to actually work on the pump. So this is a great thing for us. Next on the list, I mean, one of the things when I got here, I wanted to get all of our city buildings backup power. We're getting closer and closer all the time. We've got both fire stations now. We're actually working on Public Works is getting very close. In fact, we've got people lined up ready to come out and do the load bank test on that generator out there. And then I think Director Hogan's got the money in his budget to go ahead and hook everything up to where if we lose power for a long duration, this thing will automatically kick on, and police, fire, and any other city employee that gets their fuel out there will be able to go to the fuel pumps even though the rest of the city's out of power. So the 3 things that you need in any kind of disaster is Public Works, Police, and Fire. I mean, those are the 3 departments that have to be up and running, so we're getting very close to getting that finished up. And then the only other thing I've got, I just wanted to let you guys know that Tim Bullard, who's the deputy fire marshal that we put in place last year, he just finished up at the National Fire Academy about 2 weeks ago. So he is now a certified fire investigator. So that's going to help us out tremendously. He went through his law enforcement certification last year, and then we've got him as fire investigator. He's got several more classes to go to get everything done, and he's still trying to absorb everything that Chief Payne's got, because in less than 2 years he's going away. He's going to ride off into the sunset. So, and that's about all I've got, unless you guys have questions.
Any questions for Chief Ezo?
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is in-
Councilmember Scott.
This is in regard to department reports. A few months ago, some fairly serious accusations were made against the city in writing for financial wrongdoing and accounting errors. And I looked at those, and because I don't have a municipal accounting background, my conclusions, of course, would not be conclusive. So I have spoken with Madam City Clerk and Ms. Vega and asked that Ms. Vega give her findings from her investigation of those allegations to get the smudge off of the city's nose. And I would ask her to do that in her next financial report session, if that's okay with you.
Okay. All right. We will put that on the agenda.
Thank you.
Next item, I need a motion from the floor to read all resolutions and ordinances by title only tonight.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to read all resolutions and ordinances by title only tonight. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is unfinished business. We have the third reading of ordinance number 949 to amend the master zoning map. Madam City Clerk, if you read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 949, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map and for other purposes.
We have several representatives here tonight. We have people from the real estate company, Mr. Clark Irwin, and then we have Interstate Development and also representatives from Stericycle to answer any questions that the council members might have. Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion that we accept ordinance 949.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept ordinance number 949. Is there a discussion on that motion? Okay, if not, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian?
Yes.
Councilmember Timmons? Yes. Councilmember Williams? Yes. Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Scott?
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, please.
Mosley, sorry.
All right, the motion passes. Sorry that you gentlemen had to come out again tonight, but I'm sure y'all appreciate the positive vote, though. So thank you very much for being here in case there was any questions. And we had wonderful weather in Arkansas. I think it's snowing up north, isn't it? So you got to enjoy a great spring day in Arkansas. You're welcome. And welcome, well, I guess it's not welcome yet, but y'all will be, hopefully with the site plan approvals and everything moving forward, we hope to see y'all again at some of our meetings. All right. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to new business. We have a report from the Parking and Traffic Committee meeting on February the 26th, and it did not get put in your packet, but it was passed out at your seats tonight, and it was because I was out of the office on Thursday and didn't get it in the packet. But basically, at the February 26th Traffic Committee meeting, the Traffic Committee recommended that two stop signs be placed at Lake Point Drive, at Lake Point Place, and it was passed unanimously. And also, they made a motion to add the left turn sign with limited hours at Lake Point Drive at Edgewood Drive, and that was also motioned and passed. And there's a map that shows you exactly where those two locations are. So there's going to be a three-way stop now at Lake Point Place and Lake Point Drive. And then where Lake Point Place meets Edgewood Drive, you're going to have a limited left turn sign, meaning no left turns between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and between the hours of 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., Monday through Friday. So it's to try to help with the school traffic over at the charter school is the goal on that. And the way the traffic committee policies and procedures read, the council doesn't vote on this. They just need to be advised of the action that the traffic committee took. So that's what I'm doing tonight. If there's not any questions on that, we'll move on to the next item. Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mayor. How quickly is that going to?
Well, as soon as we can get the signs up now. We had to wait until we could let the count. We had to wait till I notified the council.
Oh, okay.
But they'll get started on those this week, I'm sure. And at the stop signs, we will definitely do something to put some flags on the signs or something like that so that people are aware of it, that there's a change in a traffic pattern there.
Is there going to be a chance of having one of our officers down there just kind of when it first gets implemented? Or I know that's hard to say.
It depends on what other issues are going on that morning because they can't always, if we have multiple accidents at the same time, I can't. But we'll try to do something, maybe with an officer there with some flashing lights or something like that.
Thank you.
All right, next item is the first reading ordinance number 950 regarding a franchise agreement with MCI Metro. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 950, an ordinance authorizing MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation DBA Verizon Access Transmission Services, its successor and assigns to construct, maintain, and operate communications network within the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, levying a franchise tax, providing for the payment thereof, describing the method of collection, and for other purposes.
Okay, we have a representative, I believe, with us tonight from MCI Metro. Mr. Brian Bennett is here to answer any questions if there's any questions by the council. Councilmember Mosley?
I just trying to find my notes here. Okay, I guess I'm curious. Do we not already have this service here in Maumelle?
No, sir. Right now, you do have Verizon Wireless, which is a local wireless provider. But as far as MCI Metro, which is a subsidiary of Verizon Telecommunications Services, no, sir, we do not have at the time a fiber network in Maumelle.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
If I can elaborate, this is in fact, this is almost identical to the franchise agreement we had, I believe, with Ritter Communications. Perhaps Mr. Bennett could explain the project, but I believe they wanted to lay cable and that they're not looking to be. Could you describe the project?
Yes, sir. I've got an overview of the project that'll probably help you out. First off, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and putting us on your agenda and for your consideration of the franchise agreement. We're very grateful for that. Just to give you a little background, what we're looking to do is to install a fiber optic network through the City of Maumelle that will be within the public right-of-way, so we will not be on any private property or anything like that. We will be placing underground conduit or mounting the fiber aerial on existing poles or possibly placement of new poles, but no new physical building structures or anything are going to be needed to support this deployment, so it'll be just straight cable placement. The fiber optic network as planned will provide services to existing and new cell site locations as well as to businesses and government customers within the community to provide one or more of the following services: voice, data communications, internet access, private line service, leasing of conduit, and dark fiber to third parties as that becomes available. So that's kind of a general idea. At the time, we do not intend to offer services such as cable TV, phone, or data to residential customers. This will be strictly for businesses and also to support our existing wireless network that we have here in the Maumelle area.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Bennett, just for the record, would you please state your name and
Oh, I'm
address
sorry.
for the record?
Yes,
And that's
yeah.
fine.
I'm sorry. This is my first city council meeting.
Well,
so I'm-
I should have prompted you.
Oh, that's okay. My name is Brian Bennett, Bennett. I'm the lead outside plant engineer with MCI Metro, which is a subsidiary of Verizon.
And address, please.
6 Regal Court, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Bennett?
He answered mine.
He answered yours. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And this will be on second reading at the next meeting, and then third will follow the meeting after that. So
Yes, sir.
we do things a little different than a lot of city councils
That's
where we
okay.
actually do 3 separate readings. So
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for your time. We
thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much, and
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for being here. Next item is resolution number, and you're welcome to leave. Yes, sir. Okay, yeah. All right. Next item is resolution 2018-07, Rolling Oaks Soccer Complex. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution 2018-07, a resolution changing the name of the Rolling Oaks Soccer Complex to the Fidelity Communications Sports Complex.
Okay, we have Mr. Joshua Clausen and I think Mr. Alan Forrest may be here tonight. And so at this time, we'd like to maybe hear from Mr. Clausen, and he can kind of give you an overview of how this came about. And if you would, state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Yes, sir. Joshua Clausen, 6 Ozark Drive. I'm not sure I've done that in quite some time. Alan, if you want to come up, and Alex, let me introduce a couple of folks to you. Alan Forrest is our communications guy on our board, and Alex Burgess is our director of coaching that we've brought on in the fall. My name is Joshua Clausen. I'm the president of the MSC board, and we're happy to be here with you tonight. The kids were a little disappointed that there was not a little bit more conversation on impact fees, but I think they'll get over it. We'd be remiss if we didn't first and foremost thank the city, and in particular Mr. Rayburn while he's here. The Maumelle Soccer Club has a terrific relationship with our Parks Department and the city. We have wonderful facilities. We play all over this region of the country, not just all over Arkansas. But we have just terrific facilities, and we're really proud of the relationship that we've got going with the city. So we wanted to say thank you first. In the interest of time, I'm going to try not to do a whole long thing for you. Just give you a couple updates on the club and what we've been doing. MSC has been around for a long, long time. I think at one point in time, Councilmember Mosley was president of that club. Oh, was it your wife? Okay. But has been very involved in the club. We've been serving the recreational soccer needs of the city for more than 30 years. And what has happened over time, as kids get older and they get more and more involved in the program, they become more and more competitive and look for another level of play. Most of the time, that starts at about 10 or 11 years old, and they get more and more competitive, and you see those kids enter what's called classic soccer programs. Maumelle hasn't had any of that. So we've been training our kids up and shipping them to North Little Rock, into Little Rock, or Cabot, or whoever else had a classic soccer program. So we got together as a board, and it was kind of a perfect storm and perfect timing. But we decided that we were done sending our kids to other cities to play soccer after we spent all of those years training them up. And so we established a classic soccer program. We brought in Alex to be our director of coaching. It's without all of the gory details about a classic soccer program, that's a much higher commitment level and also financial obligation when you get involved in something like that. And so one of the things that we knew that we were going to have to do to support this program very early on was solicit sponsorship. And that's what this resolution is, the fruits of that labor. Just a couple of things real quick about MSC to kind of bring you up to speed. We now have more than 600 kids in our program. both recreational and classic. We added 18 new teams in the fall. Alex coached our 02 and 03 girls. We talk about age groups, birth years. One to a state championship runner-up and another to a state championship. Right now, more than half of our competitive teams. Oh, look, yay. Right now, more than half of our competitive teams are ranked in the top 5 in the state. These boys yesterday just competed in a soccer tournament. Day before, yesterday were the finals in Memphis. We beat a team out of my son's team, beat a team out of Illinois to make it to the final before falling just short to a team from St. Louis. So we're playing teams from all over the country here, and really getting around. So that's some of the highlights. But in looking for sponsorship in order to support this program, we worked, luckily, and a big thank you should go to Alicia Gillen and the Chamber of Commerce for helping us partner with Fidelity Communications. And I should note that Liz Schrock is here representing Fidelity tonight. We're happy to have her. But, we thought one of the very first things we did was our vice president and I came in and sat down with the mayor, told him what we wanted to do, that we were looking for sponsorship, and we had these ideas and started walking through some of that. Last summer, we talked to several of you guys and told you we had ideas on what we wanted to do and soliciting sponsorship. Luckily enough for us, rather than naming 10 different fields and, doing this here and this here and this there, we ran into a partner like Fidelity Communications who said, "We believe in what you're doing. We want to support your kids. We'd like to be the exclusive sponsor of Maumelle Soccer." And so this is one of the things that we wanted to do to show our appreciation for Fidelity and what they're doing for us. You can see in the resolution that they've agreed to sponsor us to the tune of $45,000 over the next 2 years. That's a really big deal for our club and for our kids. This year alone, we've given out $20,000, close to $20,000 worth of scholarships to kids who can't afford to play in the program for whatever reason that is, whether it's they've got 5 kids and they can't afford all of them to play in the club, or they just have financial restraints that keep them from playing with us. We did not want that to be an obstacle to kids playing in our club. The other thing that we've been able to establish already in such a really short time is that I told you at the very beginning, we'd train our kids up and we'd ship them out. Maumelle is now a soccer destination, right? When kids around the central Arkansas and maybe sometimes a little further, we have kids right now that come down from Mountain Home to play in our club, it's not a big group and doesn't happen all the time, but we feel like that's a feather in our cap that people come from that far away to work with Alex, to work with our coaches, and to train and to play in our club. But now, instead of shipping our kids out, we keep our kids home and we bring folks in. So with that being said as an introduction, we'd love to answer any questions that you may have, any comments. And we also brought cute kids in uniform. We would have had more, but this big orange ball in the sky came out today, and everybody rushed out to practice because we haven't done that yet this season. If you guys could make it stop raining, we'd also appreciate that. I don't know if you can include that in the resolution or not.
Councilmember Timmons?
If I understand, you're giving grants? Are you giving...
Well, we call them scholarships, but it's basically reduced or eliminated all the way fees for kids who can't afford to play in the club.
And I think that alone, being able to get at-risk youth and underprivileged kids scholarships is a great deal.
Yeah.
You might save a kid.
Yeah.
Just by giving them
that opportunity.
Well, we're pretty proud of it. This year we were able to grant 100% of those requests. Now, we're not saying that's always going to be the case because things come up, and the more kids that are attracted to our program, the more requests that we'll get. But this year we were able to grant, we didn't have to tell anybody that they couldn't play with us this year because of a financial reason.
Okay, Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, just wanted to compliment you all. I know from watching my wife over the years that you all put in a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's not easy doing what you do, and you're doing something that you'll always remember, and it helps these kids. My kids played soccer for years, and one of the reasons they turned out the way they did, I think, was from what they learned in soccer and just all the teamwork and so on and so forth. It's not to say you don't do that in baseball, but I mean, it was a good learning experience. Soccer's different. Everybody can play as much as they can stand to get out there on the field.
How much is that?
Go ahead if you.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I was going to mention, there's a lot of focus there and excitement about the new program that we've established.
Right.
However, what we've been able to do is, rising tide raises all boats, right? So now that we have guys like Alex in the club, right, and professional coaches, we also take those coaches and we have them train our recreational kids. So even our existing kids and participants are seeing an increased level of training and opportunity within the club. So it's really kind of been beneficial for all involved.
I agree, and I'm not opposed to this. I haven't heard any opposition. If the mayor would like to weigh in or have any comments, I'd appreciate it. As far as something, I mean, it's kind of different that we've had something like this. But.
Well, it is different, except that we've always gone out and asked for sponsorships to pay for school boards, or we've gone out and asked for sponsorships individually to sponsor a team, and you put that, name of that on that back of that jersey or something like that, or the front of that jersey. And so this one is a little different in the sense that it's funding the entire program, and it's for a 2-year period. And their request was to rename the fields. I mean, I promise you, it's just like calling y'all council members to the alderman. I'm probably going to continue to refer to the fields as the Rolling Oaks.
Don't listen, Liz.
Complex, because its old habits are hard to break. Now, when if I'm putting something in writing or something like that we're doing an announcement, that's when it will say that this is Fidelity Sports Complex. Because it's just. That's what I know it as Rolling Oaks. And I might not even add the soccer complex on the back of it, just say Rolling Oaks Park or something like that. So, that's the funny thing about it is it's going to be hard for me to change the name in my head. But when we advertise something, and it's not me that needs to do it, it's the soccer club. When they're having their tournaments and all that, it'll be posted on everything. So
come on up, kids. We show you the uniforms.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great.
We've been, this is Parker, this is Cooper, Becca, and Max. And they've played in soccer tournaments. Shoot, we've been in Tulsa, in Dallas, in St. Louis, in Memphis, and we go all around representing the city of Maumelle and our club. Becca was on the runner-up, state championship runners-up team. Should have won, we're going to get them next year, right, Alex? Yeah. But you can see, we've got not only our normal logos, but we've got Fidelity across on our uniforms too. And everybody decided to wear black tonight except for Becca.
I just wore the one Dad gave me.
But we don't have scoreboards, right? So we're talking about one like an entrance sign and a naming rather than a scoreboard by scoreboard, field by field kind of deal.
Basically, if you're good with it, Mayor, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I do think it's funny that y'all beat a team from St. Louis because I think Fidelity's based up in that area. So
we beat the team from Illinois. St. Louis gave us the business.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, okay. So maybe they're giving them more money than y'all. So y'all need to talk to Fidelity.
Could be. We got to revisit that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, dang it. Now we really should have beat them.
All right, I've got some more lights on. Councilmember Vapurzian?
Great idea, 100% for it. Is there the potential of a longer-term commitment down the road?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is something we'd like to continue for a long time, right? With the nature of any business, I don't know what...
There's a way that we could more benefit Fidelity. By the way, for $45,000, Liz, I would change my last name to Fidelity. So I'm a public figure, Liz. Just think about it.
Well,
is that before or after Family Feud?
Just get with me. Could you see the Fidelity family on Family Feud? Thank you, Caleb.
Exactly.
This was a new endeavor for us, and I'm sure for Fidelity as well. So what we want to do is show them a good product, right? And I think that we're doing that so far. And yeah, we'd like to have a long-term relationship with them. You bet. They've been terrific for us.
All right, Councilmember Williams.
It sounds like a dream come true. I know how hard it is to get sponsorship money, and I appreciate Fidelity for stepping up and doing this for our kids. I've got one who plays too, so a grandkid, and she loves it, and I appreciate what y'all do, what you give back to these kids, and these sponsorships sound amazing, and I am all for this. I appreciate the hard work you put into it.
Our pleasure, and thanks for sponsoring our resolution and working with us.
Councilmember Holt.
I know you talked to me way last year about this and about them being sponsored, and you know, I think it's a great idea then. Living across the street from a soccer field, I know it's a big business, that's for sure. So I have had Fidelity since the very first day they got here. They've treated me great. They take care of me. Super company. And I think if I vote yes, I deserve a shirt.
We'll see what we do. The city attorney did not hear that, right?
Motion to approve resolution.
Chamber will be giving shirts. How about that?
Resolution 2018-07, when you're ready.
Oh, well, that's what I was going to do.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, go ahead.
Second.
Okay. All right, so you were going to make the motion. All right.
I'll second.
No, you've already made the motion, so, all right.
Second motion.
We're all fighting over who's going to.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-07. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion is passed.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I know when you get a yes, you're supposed to run out of here and say thank you. We did have some questions on benefit to the city, and I think that not only is this a terrific benefit for the youth in our community and others around, but we will continue to partner with Parks and Rec and the city for field improvement projects and whatever else. If you guys ever want to know what's going on in our soccer program, please come out and see us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And
Can we leave also?
you can leave, yes, sir.
Withdraw the motion.
Next item is resolution number 2017-08. I think it should have been allowing mayor to enter into annexation agreement instead of approving mayor. So I don't know. I don't always know that I get approvals. So, but allowing the mayor to enter into an annexation agreement. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2018-08, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an annexation agreement with Interchange LLC.
Councilmember Mosley.
Back, I guess, a couple of years ago, we kind of implemented a little policy that if we had a resolution that involved a very complicated matter, very serious matter, that perhaps we look at it over two sessions. We take the first council session to try to beat it up and see if it's something we want to do, and then ask follow-up questions and things at the next one. I'm assuming people remember this?
I only remember it being pertaining to budget items, budget resolutions, not anything that was difficult.
Oh, is that right?
That's what I remember.
Yeah,
Now
so
that's
we haven't actually discussed that or invoked it for a year or so, and I wasn't sure.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I remembered it being related to.
Okay. All right. We'll proceed on here. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, and basically, we've been talking for a while about the annexation agreements. We've been working with Mr. Freeman's attorney. Mr. Freeman is the one of the owners of Interchange LLC, or represents him, and then his attorney. And so this is, as it's spelled out, it's an annexation agreement. If certain conditions are met, they would annex to the city of Maumelle, and then we're required to do certain things. And one of the things that I was fighting far. One is that the only thing that we're guaranteeing that we would do in the future, as far as any future services, is provide police and fire protection. We would not provide any additional utilities or anything like that. It's item 6, is if you want to flip on page 3, but it just says interchange acknowledges that water lines to the interchange will be provided by Central Arkansas Water, that sewer utilities to the interchange will be provided by North Rock Wastewater, and that natural gas, electricity, and other utilities will be provided by third parties. Interchange agrees that the city will not, by virtue of this annexation of the interchange property to the city, be required to construct any water, sewer, electric, or gas lines to the interchange property. However, the city agrees that once annexed into the city, the interchange property shall be entitled to police and fire protection and all other services offered to the property owners of the city. So, therefore, in my mind, we're not promising that we're going to provide utilities. We're not promising any road improvements into these areas or anything like that. Yes, it is complicated procedure, but it's you've had them since Thursday to review and then to ask any questions of myself or the city attorney on this resolution. So.
I was mainly concerned, we really haven't discussed any of this in public, and, I know it would be a very difficult thing to, and this actually looks kind of like what I expected would come out. But anyway, so that was my thought on all that, but I think we'll go ahead and see what we can do here. Any other, I did notice that there's no water and sewer, and that was I compared the agreements from the first one. I'll have to say this about the mayor. I asked him years ago, I read the old one back before I even ran for office, back in 2011 or 2012. And my mouth just dropped open of all the convoluted things that we would be obligated to provide under that other one. There were very interesting things with zoning, and the water and the sewer was a tremendous wild card as far as cost and what the city would have had to have done if we had not gotten the CAW and the North Little Rock wastewater thing to come down that alley. I don't know how many millions that we might have been on the hook for, but that was a very fortunate thing that happened. Yeah. And my thoughts going into this is we need to be these are very sophisticated people, I think, that we're dealing with. Probably one of the most sophisticated landowners anywhere in Arkansas. Very, very brilliant individual that owns these corporations, and he's good. And I've been concerned that maybe he's got some high-powered attorneys. He's got experience, advice, that sort of thing, and I want to make sure that we've done all we can to protect ourselves, especially on zoning, as far as this thing goes forward, to make sure we get out of this what we're actually shooting for, and that's more commercial development. So, we can hammer it tonight. We may say we need to hammer it some more, but I think we all need to be very, very, very comfortable with whatever we come up with tonight. If we approve this sales tax thing, that's going to be a big change for Maumelle, and this is the biggest thing I think that will impact going forward, and how things develop out that way. So we need to be very, very careful with what we do. Make sure we've beaten this thing up. So, but I was very, very pleased that this agreement didn't have water and sewer in it, but there's very similar language as far as zoning, allowing, which is very interesting, a landowner to basically, as I read it, dictate to the city what the zoning will be on this at various points. I cannot really follow at what points that can be done, but that's something I'm not comfortable with at this point. I think it's very unusual also, the business about the land from the rest area. He wants to control that after this thing goes, and he's asking us to help him with that. And that's, I don't know how unusual these kind of things are, but these are very, very unusual things. There may even be constitutional questions as far as a landowner being able to dictate his own zoning.
Well-
So there's a lot of serious things we need to kind of look at here.
Okay, well, and the number 3 says the city agrees to zone all of interchange property as interchange shall direct in its petition. But what they're gonna do is request some kind of zoning that's not valued as much at the start, but then it says the city agrees to zone or rezone any portion of the interchange property and west property to a zoning classification of C3 or C4, that's based on our planning director's recommendation that this property should be C3 or C4. C4 is highway commercial, which is the same thing we have at Morgan. So, and then the lands maybe not directly on that street would be C3. You don't know. That's the problem right now, is you don't know how it's going to fully develop as far as, right next to the interchange may develop C4, but then the land further removed from that would be C3. But what you also look at in number 8, it says the parties agree and understand that this agreement must be considered and adopted by the Maumelle City Council.
Just talking about just this agreement here. Then it does say something about further understand that waiver of city ordinances or zoning or whatever must likely.
Right.
I would rather see the word subject to in there. Subject to that, that's a little bit more clear than waiver. I mean, there's times I wonder if they would find us in breach of agreement if we did not change the zoning as they ask. They may find we're in breach and perhaps de-annex. That's a concern of mine. If we go all this far, something like that trip us up. And I'd appreciate if Mr. Neri, if he's still in the audience, if he could weigh in on this. I don't know if he's still around.
He's gone. Yeah.
And this is, has the Planning Commission, have they signed off on all this? Have they studied this? Has Mr. Neri?
We got this last week in its final form, so I will tell you, no, they have not.
What is the rush then? This is all subject to the sales tax passing, so.
It is, but it's not a rush necessarily. I'm not going to say it's a rush, but people all along keep asking, the question, and it's a lot from the opposition to the sales tax that, what's any guarantee they're going to annex to the city of Maumelle? I mean, this is some of what would require that to happen, and so, it's not the people that are necessarily in favor of it. It's the people that are opposed are saying, well, you don't even have an agreement with them. So, if you want to say there's a rush, that might be the rush, but.
I don't know if that's that big a deal to.
Okay, and I'm not saying that it has to be voted on tonight. You can always table a resolution.
And based on how the discussion goes, I may make that motion.
But
I'm not comfortable at this point. But I'm happy to turn it over to other questions here right now.
Okay, Councilmember Vapurzian.
I was just going to make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-08.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-08. Is there a discussion on that motion? And I still have lights on, so we'll continue on. Councilmember Scott?
Yes, I was wondering if our city attorney has looked at this and if you have any concerns.
So I have more than looked at this.
Sure.
The mayor said.
We have a high-powered attorney, too. So.
Yeah. The mayor said we got the final form recently. This has been on, and I've talked to Mr. Mosley about this in the past. I think it's been several months, and I said we've been working. We've gone back and forth. I don't know how many drafts. We've had meetings between them, me and the mayor, both in person or through email or through phone conversations. I'm never going to say that because I've looked at this and approved of it, somebody who has spent their career in this might pick up something that I didn't. But I would say that if you compare this annexation agreement to the ones that we had in the past, we fought very hard to do things like make it very clear that we're not paying for roads, we're not paying for anything other than the interchange itself, And then once annexed in, police and fire, and you'll be treated just like everyone else. But, I know they're planning a road through there. We're not building a road through their property. At least it's not promised in this annexation agreement. They wanted us to guarantee that we'd rezone it at any point in time to whatever classification they wanted. The mayor and I both said not no, but heck no. So we, after going back and forth, and you know how these things go, back and forth, and let me talk to my client and so on and so forth, we've limited it to C3 or C4. We've got other assurances. A lot of folks don't know this, but a big portion of their property, Interchange LLC's property on this side that's already part of Maumelle, is zoned industrial. We've got assurances in here that if they're building anything for commercial developments in that industrial zoned area, that they'll actually apply for a rezoning to commercial. Our industrial code currently allows some commercial developments. This contract will be limiting them in doing that. The benefit then is we get to apply our more stricter commercial zoning regulations to a commercial development that might have been able to come in under industrial, which would be a broader category of, it's more lenient. They could have more metal buildings. So we've got assurances for property already annexed into the Maumelle that, that if they're going to do commercial developments, it'll be bumped up. Let's see if anything else jumps to mind. We did put in there that we're clear that so the council has to approve certain things along the way. This is not an annexation petition. If this is agreed upon, it does not mean that they are, no matter what, they're not part of the city. And so part of that is that they would apply for a permit, and this city council cannot bind a future city council's policy decisions in that way. So we made sure that there's a provision in there saying all we can do is submit it to the city council. The city council will ultimately decide whether or not they're going to approve that, but that the city will work toward that the recommendation from staff would be to cooperate. Ultimately, it will be the city council's decision, just like anything. I also wanted to address the annexation issue. I was trying to pull up the code, but my understanding of the current code is that the property that is annexed into the city is annexed in as R1 or as designated by the applicant. And of course, if the city council doesn't like that classification, say it comes in as R3 or multifamily housing, of course, the council has the authority to, they're the ones making that determination at the time of annexation, whether to annex or not. What we couldn't do, though, is enforce this conditional annexation agreement by saying, no, you must annex in and we get to choose your zoning. But to the extent that the city was going to accept their annexation petition and annex them in, it would be at the zoning classification that they are requesting. So I guess, Councilmember Mosley, to answer your question, any annexation that comes into the city, the petitioner, the person applying in a voluntary annexation, any person applying to be annexed into the city gets to choose their zoning, and then the city council gets to say, no, we don't want industrial over here, so we're not going to accept your annexation into the city as industrial. And I guess through negotiations on the back end or beforehand, we could negotiate where, we're just not going to put industrial right here in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So to the extent you want to become part of the city, we're going to need a residential zoning or maybe light commercial or whatever the council would find palatable.
Let me follow up while
Yes,
you were
sir.
talking that. I had asked you a couple of months ago what it would come in as, and I think I understood you said residential.
Well, by default, when someone annexes into the city, it's R1 if they don't designate a zoning classification.
Okay, so it would
So if they designate it, and it would be in the petition that the city council, when they annex in the zoning, is included at that time. So it wouldn't be a surprise or a secret when the city annexed in, and then they wake up in the morning and read the newspaper the next day and find out, oh, we annexed in an industrial complex when we thought we were accepting in a different designation. One of the things that we really tried to lock them down on is to tell us today what you would zone this. So let's work into the agreement what the zoning is now, not we'll study this later and come up with something. And the difficulty with that is that they said they just wouldn't know the best use of each individual parcel until, and Eric Holloway's informed of this. I see him nodding. And please let me know if I'm misstating something. I know you're not representing this on this project, but we've talked about other annexations that may follow this one. The concern was that they wouldn't have the studies done at this time, and it has really been the city pushing at this point for an annexation agreement with them to get some sort of assurances that if we do everything we're saying we're going to do, you guys have to promise to do what we're letting everyone know is said is going to be done, if that makes sense. Because there's been a lot of discussions about during the special elections, the issues have come up with these areas that are going to be annexed in, and we have wanted on our end more assurances that that'll actually happen as opposed to just a pie-in-the-sky promise, right? So it's been the city pushing this. We couldn't get them to declare ahead of time what zoning, and in all likelihood, it's 230 acres. I think the idea was that it might be multiple different zonings depending on the topography and the development costs for the different areas and so on and so forth. And so considering they hadn't spent the money doing the studies and tested the market just yet, that was as far as we could get. I don't anticipate a annexation agreement anytime soon that would get them to declare what their zoning would be at this time, right? So I don't think in the next 3 months or 6 months we could get an annexation agreement where they would be comfortable stating what they anticipate in several years zoning the property as.
Okay.
And there was something else I wanted to add, but I can't think of it.
Well, where you're thinking, I will say something here to clarify what I said a minute ago. I was talking about all his high-powered experts and advice. I want to compliment our city attorney. He is one of the most brilliant individuals I've ever met in my life. And I in no way discount anything you try to do. It's just one of those deals. There may be two brilliant attorneys in a room. One may have 20 years of real estate experience, and the other one has one.
Yeah, and I tried to preface that at the beginning. I may not be brilliant, but I'm smart enough to know that I don't know everything, and I haven't spent 30 years in this niche of a practice area. So I've learned the more people look at things, the better. That being said, with my so limited resources and our negotiation powers on this end, I think we've come out with something far better than was originally proposed, which I think was starting even better than the prior annexation agreements we have.
Yeah, it is.
And it is up to the council to make a determination as to whether you guys think it's good enough or postpone it. That is a council decision. I would also note, since apparently I'm talking and someone pulled the cork out and I won't shut up, as soon as we go forward with this, there are other property owners in this area that we are using this annexation agreement as the template. I've got forms of others. If this is approved and the council's okay with it, I would expect to see additional annexation agreements forthcoming pretty quickly, as an FYI.
I want to add one thing. I was the person that was tasked with fulfilling the agreement that was made prior to. And
I was going to say something good about you, and that was it. I forgot to follow up.
Well,
Go ahead.
But that's part of what drove me to try to make, this one didn't just get rubber stamped or came through the first time, because that agreement caused a lot of heartburn and headache and lack of sleep for me too.
Years,
so
probably, yes.
yes. So I tried to, it's always a give and take. There's a negotiation and everything when you're doing these agreements, but I've had to live through one that I hated so much that I tried to make this one at least palatable to myself too, so that it's more desirable for the city. So
I remember our conversation. I said, this is a really tough deal, and you said, yes, it is. And you don't elaborate a whole lot, but I said, you're very brave for taking this on because I don't know how this is going to turn out, and so it is probably turning out better than we would have ever expected. That first one.
And I wanted to add this really quick. Our goal was to have this annexation agreement at the time that you guys had the ordinances on the special election. So, and I think we had preliminary drafts, and we're going back and forth at that time. And so, just to reiterate, it is not last minute.
Cut and paste.
It is not cut and paste, and has been a definite back and forth. That being said, don't not vote to table it because you think I will be insulted. If that's what, clearly I'm saying I would not be insulted or take it personally if y'all wanted to get someone else to look at it or to write the thing in next time.
And thank you for responding to my question because I kind of knew what had gone on and I wanted you just to vocalize that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Holt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to try to wade through the first part. My part of it mostly is about the heading on the resolution itself. The heading, the resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an annexation agreement with Interchange LLC. So the first whereas says that LLC owns the 240 acres, and they're the ones we would be dealing with. Second paragraph says, well, there's going to be an election for taxation, and then just goes on to the third one, says that if the 420 acres of land are annexed, well, then the city and the LLC want to, they agree they want to do that. The fourth one says, well, if the measure passes, which refers to paragraph 2, well, then we desire to develop this. But the last one says, well, the city council, if we enter into it, that we will eventually be annexing their properties. So what is this resolution? Are we doing it to go ahead and do it, or is there some kind of delay that eventually, what is the eventually thing that we're not dealing with right now?
So this is an annexation agreement. It is not an annexation petition. If the city council approves this resolution, it'll authorize the mayor to enter into the annexation agreement. There are several conditions in the annexation agreement, probably most easily discernible as the results of the special election coming up on the March 13th is the date, in case anyone didn't know that. If that fails and we don't get the funding at that time, then this annexation agreement is essentially, it's not void, but they're not obligated to annex into the city of Maumelle.
Right. It does sound like there's been an awful lot of discussion that the council has not been privileged to. So this is like brand new, to me at least. 2 meetings ago, I approached the mayor after the meeting and explained to him that one of my constituents had asked about annexation, that during the presentation that there had said that there was a couple of property holders that were holding out and were not ready to annex. So the mayor told me that, well, no, they're going to wait until after we pass this and then we will annex. So now we have this the Monday prior to the election, a week from 1 week away, and sorry folks, it sounds like more of a all of a sudden here we are just before the election, and it sounds like, well, we're trying to convince everybody that we really do want to do this, and it's like, I don't know what it is. I'm not going to make anything else out of it. I'm just saying that for this council, this is an incredibly important decision for these 8 members to have to vote on. Yes, we're not the lawyers and we're not the developers and we're not anything, but we're just the ones that vote. And I would, if we could table this, I would be glad to make a second motion that we table this and give us some time to read it and study it and ask questions. It is a huge responsibility and a lot of money is involved, and the future of our city is involved. So I don't think it would be, I'm not going to call it rushing. I just wish that we could have a little bit more time to think about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Holt. I guess you made a motion to table, right?
We've already have a motion.
Well, I understand, but there can be a subsequent motion, so.
Are you asking?
Okay, no, I'm asking Councilmember Holt. He made a motion to table, so,
And I will second that motion.
okay. There's a motion and a second to table Resolution 2018-8, and that's wrong, too. It should say 2018 in the agenda, 2018-08. Okay, and so that takes precedence over the previous motion. So now we're discussing whether to table Resolution 2018-08. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I would echo what Councilmember Holt talked about, and it's basically what I was talking about. There's some things that I'm not comfortable with yet. I wouldn't be able to vote yes tonight. I would certainly love to get some input from our planning director, Jim Neri, on this thing, and maybe ask some questions about zoning and how comfortable he is with some things and that sort of thing. He's the expert. I want to kind of listen to him. So we could either table it for 2 weeks, the next meeting. We could do a workshop in between, maybe something we may all be happy after 30 minutes, or we can continue this discussion at the next one. So, but I would, I don't know if you named a time period, but I'd say at least 2 weeks.
You did not.
I think you should see if your motion passes.
He could amend his motion.
He can't amend his motion, but if he tables it, I just want you to be clear that then it takes the council to pull it back off the table, is what they call that. So it would take a motion by the council to pull it back off the table at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So.
But that's where I stand.
Okay, is there any other questions or discussions on the motion to table resolution number 2018-08? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes. Yes. Are you yes?
To continue it, is that what the motion is?
The motion
to table.
To table.
That's your motion.
Back your motion.
Yes.
Good.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All those in favor, there was 2 yeses. All those opposed say no.
No.
I think we have 6 noes. Is that correct? Okay, so motion fails. We have a motion currently on the floor to approve resolution number 2018-08. Is there any more discussion on that motion? If not, all those, Councilmember Mosley?
No, I think I've asked all my questions here, and so we might as well go ahead and vote.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-08. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
Motion passes.
And I guess the final vote was 6-2. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I believe that it was correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item, mayor's comments. I don't think I need to mention it. There's a sales tax election on March the 13th, but no, there is a information sheet in your packet that gives you the actual voting precincts and the voting date on March the 13th, and you can vote from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., and then you can early vote in Maumelle starting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. till 5 p.m., and that will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So March 6th through March the 9th, you can vote in Maumelle from 10 to 5. And you can also vote at the Pulaski County Regional Building which is 501 West Markham Street in Little Rock, which is directly across the street from Little Rock City Hall, and it's where Metro Plan's offices are located. You can vote there starting Tuesday morning, March the 6th, through Monday, March the 12th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They will not be voting on Saturday or Sunday. It is weekday only. So, but just want everybody to be aware of the election that's coming up. Next item is the Planning Commission report, and that will be done after the Planning Commission, since there wasn't one last month. City Council member comments? Councilmember Vapurzian?
Wanted to thank the mayor. Had an issue that he was already aware of. One of our constituents over on Garden Oaks had a lot of water problems, water running through his yard, really deep. Put sandbags up there, and Mike Hogan stopped by and gave him some more sandbags. They already worked on the road, and there's not a lot that can be done for this guy, but the water just runs, the way the road curves, it just runs right up through his yard. He's had it in his garage, not in his house, but his backyard, it floods, covers half the air conditioning, and it's just part of the lay of the land type of a situation. And but mayor is well aware of it, and want to thank Mike for stopping out there, and at least we can't do what he would like us to do, but at least we can offer a helping hand. And that was very, very generous of that, and I appreciate the mayor and Mike doing that. So,
okay. Thank you very much. I told someone the other day that the most helpless feeling that any mayor or city official can have is when you're standing in somebody's yard just watching the water come up and it continues to rain and there's nothing you can do. I mean, you want a big umbrella to try to stop it, but it's a helpless feeling, I will tell you that, and not one that I like to experience. So, any other council member comments? Mr. City Attorney?
No, sir.
Madam City Clerk?
Briefly, I'd like to apologize to Councilmember Mosley for my dramatic pause during the roll call vote. I am very well familiar with your name. And I also wanted to mention that I noticed that we have some new faces in the audience, and I'm glad you guys continued on and came to the council meeting. So it's great to see some new faces. That's it.
All right. And just one other item, probably under FYI, I'll stick the information that Mr. Townsell left us. I also have the state law on impact fees also, and then I have their ordinance from Conway too. And I'll probably just stick it in a packet, and it will also have the budget for Conway. They brought in last year, where'd it go? I had it marked earlier. Last year they brought in $415,000 in impact fees. The year before that was $293,000, but they only budgeted $300,000 in 2018 for road impact fees. So,
what's their annual budget? Any idea?
Well, I looked at their whole budget. I only copied a couple of pages.
That's all right.
It's $40 million. Yes. And they're 3 times our size or more, and like their police vehicles, they spend $494,000 in police vehicles in 2016. So yeah, those were 2016 numbers I gave you. For 15 and 16, they budgeted 2017. They don't do actuals or estimated for the year before, but yeah. So, but yeah, that on the one page I'm looking at, but yeah, but they have about $3 million coming in just for sales tax on their street and police vehicles. So, yeah.
They have what we don't.
Well, they have a larger population and they have a lot of retail too in their community.
But they have done well on I-40.
Yes.
We will too.
They have used I-40 as a hub.
But I'm going to include that in probably the next packet as far as just from FYI information. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Meeting is adjourned.
Is it really going to look like that?
No, the red line will be on top of that.
It's been driving me crazy the whole time.
No, they can't, on a printer, he can't do, like when he makes